All right, folks. As follows, adequate notice of this November the 9th, 2017 meeting has been provided in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act by posting written notice and agenda of the meeting on the bulletin board in the municipal building at 1000 Route 10, Township of Hanover, and by hand delivering, mailing, or faxing such notice and agenda to the following newspapers: Morris County's Daily Record, the Star Ledger, Hanover Eagle, and by filing same with the Township Clerk. May I have a roll call, please?
On roll call, Committeeman Gallagher.
Here.
Committeeman Faramasca.
Here.
Committeeman Bruno.
Here.
Committeeman Capola is excused. He has a personal commitment. And Mayor Francioli.
Here.
4 members in attendance, sir.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, would you all please rise and join me first, along with our Pledge of Allegiance, in a prayer, opening prayer for the Township. Almighty God, we ask that you bless this governing body with an abundance of wisdom and understanding, so that deliberation will result in actions which will promote the common good and the general welfare for all the people of Hanover Township. Amen.
Amen.
Please join me in a pledge of allegiance to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all very much. Please be seated. Okay. At this time, it's an honor for the Township Committee to offer a proclamation on the 85th anniversary of the Ukrainian genocide, 1932 to 1933. And I almost take exception to the word commemorating for an atrocity of such a nature. But the Ukrainian community in Hanover Township, needless to say, has played an incredible role in bringing this township along to where it is now. From the early days of the mills, etc., the labor force, etc., the Ukrainian community has played a major part. So at this time, we have prepared a proclamation which we'd like to read into the record tonight, and I'd like to offer it if someone would second.
Second.
Okay, and I'll have the administrator read it into the record. Father, this is for the church.
Okay, it's a proclamation of the Township Committee of the Township of Hanover in the County of Morris and State of New Jersey, commemorating the 85th anniversary of the Ukrainian genocide of 1932 to 1933. Whereas 85 years ago, Soviet leader Joseph Stalin and his totalitarian regime committed an act of genocide through the implementation of an engineered famine, confiscating land, grain, and animals from the Ukrainian people, resulting in deaths of up to 10 million innocent men, women, and children. Whereas this genocide, Holodomor, meaning murder by starvation, was specifically designed by the Soviet regime to punish independent-minded Ukrainians for their resistance to its economic, political, and social oppression. And whereas at the height of the Holodomor in 1933, Ukrainians died at the rate of 25,000 people a day, with nearly a third of its victims being children less than 10 years old. And whereas even the Soviets continued to export Ukraine's grain to the rest of the world, Ukrainian farmers who tended to the farms in the breadbasket of the USSR were tragically starved to a slow and painful death. And whereas hundreds of archival KGB documents created during this genocide detailed and described the Soviet regime's actions and intention to destroy Ukrainian national identity by deporting and execute Ukraine's religious, intellectual, and cultural leaders, prosecuting or executing any others who dared to speak of the famine or to speak against the Soviet authorities publicly, further destabilizing Ukraine's political structure. And whereas, under the global theme, Ukraine remembers the world acknowledges. It is necessary that the Ukrainian genocide, Holodomor, 1932 to 1933, be officially recognized by the global community as a tragic and heinous crime against humanity in order to prevent similar tragedies from occurring in the future. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Township Committee of the Township of Hanover in the County of Morrison, State of New Jersey, as follows. On behalf of its citizens, the governing body hereby proclaims the month of November 2017 as Ukrainian Genocide Remembrance Month in the Township of Hanover, and urge all individuals, groups, organizations, and institutions to remember the Holodomor with appropriate activities designed to honor its victims and educate the world about the tragic episode in this world's history. Throughout this 85th anniversary year, let us recommit ourselves to reflect upon the historical truth of the heinous crimes of totalitarian regimes, so that we may one day eliminate tyranny from our world. Signed, Ronald F. Francioli, Mayor, on behalf of the Township Committee.
Thank you, Joe. Father Stefan, if you want to come forward and receive this. Okay. As we speak today, everyone does know that Ukraine is still fighting to be one democratic country. And they will prevail. We'll open that up. Thank you, Father. At this time, gentlemen, motion to open to the public for any items not appearing on the agenda.
So moved.
Moved and seconded. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my understanding we might have some folks here tonight that want to discuss the application before the Planning Board, which is the Barclays Bank application. So for the purposes of this meeting, we want to hear everyone and we want to hear you, but I'd like to save that portion of the meeting. We're going to open again, but if we get through the business portion of our meeting, I'd like to open it again and give you an opportunity all to be heard and we can discuss it openly. So having said that, if anybody else would like to address the Township Committee at this time, but it's not on the Barclays Bank subject, Gary, you've got this quizzical look on your face.
Well, just want to hear you, Mr. Mayor. Gary Kaiser, 16 Lynn Terrace, Whippany, New Jersey. Now, gentlemen, I'm here tonight. I hear rumors throughout the township that the Township Mayor and the Township Committee is going to be co-signing for a loan for the Whippany Fire Company. And I just would like to know if that is true.
I think the subject of the finance of the Whippany Fire Company, along with the county involving the Township Committee, is a point of discussion at this point. I don't think any conclusion has been made.
Okay.
I think the Township Committee is taking all the facts into consideration and working with the fire company to try and accomplish what the goal is, and the goal is obviously to come up with a amicable, reasonable finance program for them to complete the firehouse.
Okay. There's nothing, just to this talking stage.
Ron, can I ask Mr. Kaiser a quick question?
Yeah, sure.
Gary, quick question for you before you go. When is the official Christmas tree lighting at the Cedar Knolls Firehouse?
27th.
Great opportunity to say it on TV right now for all the residents.
November 25th, Saturday, 5 p.m.
5 p.m.
Yeah.
5 p.m. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ron.
Very good. Anyone else like to be heard at this time? Terry, how you doing?
I'm doing okay. How are you? Long time no see.
Twice in 1 week. You were at our Board of Health meeting last night.
I know.
And thank you for your kind remarks last night at the Board of Health. They're very
That's
much
why I
appreciated.
attended.
Very good. Terry, give us your name and address for the
Terry
record.
Baird, 180 Parsippany Road on the Whippany section of Hanover. I just wanted to officially address the fact of the post office difficulties that are happening and have been happening for quite a number of years now. And I was hoping that if I brought it up here at the meeting, that it would somehow grease the wheels so that something would happen. It was brought to my attention on Facebook in reference to somebody's recycling can getting caught underneath the postal truck and taken down the street. And there's been other things where people have seen postal trucks backing up for houses. They're not even supposed to be putting their vehicles in reverse, nor are they supposed to be going into people's driveways. And also their lack of ability to deliver certified mail, which I realize that the Barclay, when people raised their hand that said they didn't get notice, I realized that, that everything was done correctly according to how it's supposed to be.
According to the planning board, yeah.
Right. But when people aren't notified, I would think that that would leave either the town or Barclays open for some sort of legal type of situation, possibly. I know myself, I've sent certified mail, and they don't have people sign for it. They never come to your door, even though you're home. They leave a little slip of paper, you sign for it, you don't even get it.
Yeah.
I've sent certified mail in reference to legal action that I've had myself, and months later, 8 months now, they still can't find it. So if there's anything that you possibly can do in reference to the post office situation, a lot of people would really appreciate it.
The postal system over the last few years in our town and other towns, has really gone down in service in all ways. It's not just the registered mail situation where we had to be assured that a recipient got the mail. Now they leave a little postcard on your doorstep, and even if you were home, they said, well, you got it, But I think what the administrator and I can do is, once again, we do have some contacts with the General Post Office, and we could reach out to them on certain. I've been following some of the issues, as you know, and the individual postal carriers that are doing certain things that they should not be, backing up postal trucks 2-3 addresses in order to get to somebody else. I think we can bring this to the attention of the General Postmaster once again and see what we can possibly do. I think what we'd also like to do is, along with our council and even addressing it with the General Post Office, is ask this question about what the legalities are in the delivery of registered mail. It's a system that we use in the planning board to notify individuals affected by an application, and they haven't gotten it properly. And of course, the planning board position is, well, you know what, we did our job. Well, that's fine, but let's see. I'll have the administrator set up another meeting with the General Postmaster. We can do that.
Yeah, because I've been there to complain at the post office, and after waiting 45 minutes, they still would not send a supervisor out. Nor would they even tell me the supervisor's name so that I could write to them.
It doesn't surprise me. It doesn't surprise me. Let me give you some other good news. We just heard from the Morris County Open Space Preservation, Farmland Preservation Trust, and we were awarded a grant from them, a grant application that we had made to acquire the Whippany Post Office, the old vacated Whippany Post Office. So that portion of the grant is complete. I think that we move forward now with the Green Acres on that. And then, of course, Hanover Township will be putting up a certain amount of money from our Open Space Trust Fund, our Open Space Fund. That having been said, we're going to acquire that piece of land, and it's our intention to take that post office down and turn that into a pocket park. So I think that'll be great.
Will you be putting a mailbox there? Just had to ask.
But we'll get back to you on our discussions with the postmaster. Michael, how you doing?
Good. Good evening, gentlemen. Want to Michael Halliday from Cedar Knolls. Want to sincerely thank you for that proclamation that the township just read, and we thank you for the flag waving last week from Town Hall. The majority of Americans have no idea of how horrible this tragedy or this murder that Stalin promoted on our people. Just picture any farmer in Sussex County, New York, down south in New Jersey. One day, the family is out there grazing their fields, having their livestock, picking up the eggs from their chickens, and one day the Russians come in and they tell the family, you no longer own this, you have to leave tomorrow. That's it. There were people that were dying, like you said, 25,000 a day. They tried to destroy the Ukrainian nation, and God bless our ancestors, the courage and the strength that they had to fight, to promote our religion, because on top of trying to take our families, farms, and destroy us, they tried to erase Jesus Christ from our country and our core. It would never happen. Thank God. My family taught us the freedom and the greatness of this country and everything it stands for. And I can't thank you enough for recognizing this and showing we are a free country. And I thank all of you, Mayor, John, Bob Bruno, and George. You were there at our opening of our cultural center in our church, and we thank you for your support and thank you for everything that you do for our community. God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you. The fight of the Ukrainian community continues, as we know, with the Russians imposing their will on the eastern section of Ukraine. We only hope there'll be a day similar to was when we announced that Ukraine was free. And once again, I hope to be sitting here when we can announce once again that the entire Ukraine is once again free. So we pray for that as well.
Thank you. And I also wanted to mention that there was a writer for the New York Times, Walter Duranty, that covered up for Stalin. He denied that there was a famine in what Stalin was doing. Times change, but history repeats itself. Look what the New York Times is today. They're apologists, and they won't tell the truth of what is happening in Ukraine today and what the reality is on the ground. I'm sorry. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael. The floor remains open. Anyone else would like to address the Township Committee at this time? If not, I'm going to close this portion. We'll go through some business, and I'm going to reopen the meeting very shortly. So on that note, Mr. Administrator.
Okay, first item of formal business is the approval of the Township Committee minutes, the regular meeting minutes of October 26, 2017. May
Motion to approve.
A motion by
Second.
Mr. Bruno, second by Mr. Gallagher. On roll call, Mr. Gallagher.
Aye.
Mr. Faramasca.
Aye.
Mr. Bruno.
Aye.
And Mr. Francioli.
Aye.
So approved. We have the following departmental reports on file in the Administrator's office. They include the report of the Chief of Police on all activities conducted by the Police Department in October. And we have the reports of the Superintendent of Public Works, Buildings and Grounds and Park Maintenance on all the projects and activities conducted by the department, also in October. And finally, we have the Capital Improvement Project Status Report submitted by our Township Engineer as of today, November 9th, 2017. Ladies and gentlemen, as we continue this evening, we have 3 ordinances that are docketed for introduction. The first is ordinance number 24-2017. This is an ordinance of the Township Committee amending and supplementing Chapter 166 of the Code of the Township, entitled Land Use and Development Legislation, by amending the regulations for the WC Whippany Center Zone District. This ordinance will be further considered for public hearing and final passage at the Township Committee meeting on the 14th of December at 8:30 p.m. here in the main meeting room of the Municipal Building. And at that time, any person wishing to be heard will be given the opportunity to speak. It's further resolved that the ordinance and the notice of introduction will be published in full in the Daily Record in accordance with law. So at this time, may we have a motion to introduce?
Second.
Have a motion by Mayor Francioli, seconded by Mr. Bruno. On roll call for introduction, Mr. Gallagher.
Aye.
Mr. Faramasca.
Aye.
Mr. Bruno.
Aye.
And Mr. Francioli.
Aye.
So introduced.
Okay. Just for the public's understanding, and this is an introduction, there'll be public comment on it when it's finalized, but this ordinance now modifies the zone of the Whippany Village, where we have the CVS and the Chase Bank and the fire company. So it allows now the fire company to sell their property on an independent basis. It's part of what's known as a planned unit development, required 10 acres inclusive of the fire company. But this ordinance now separates both the fire company's property from the balance of the site, which means that the fire company is free to sell their property as they see fit, and the remaining 8 acres will develop as was originally planned. I'm going to guess some 7-8 years ago when this was first developed as a Whippany Village zone. So that's what that's all about, and there'll be public comment at the next meeting.
Thank you, Mayor.
Joe, go ahead.
Thank you. Our second ordinance for introduction is docketed as Ordinance 25-2017. This is an ordinance of the Township Committee authorizing the purchase and installation of an uninterruptible power supply system, known as a UPS system, batteries, and other related improvements for the police department's communications console and 911 system, and further appropriating the sum of $40,000 from the unallocated portion of the Township's 2017 Capital Improvement Fund and all prior years for the financing of the improvements described in the ordinance. This ordinance as well will be further considered for public hearing and consideration of adoption at the Township Committee meeting of December 14th at 8:30 p.m. here in the main meeting room. And at that time, any person wishing to comment about the ordinance will be given the opportunity to be heard. And as the administrator and clerk, I'm further directed to advertise the ordinance in full with a notice of introduction in the Daily Record in accordance with law. May we now have a motion for introduction?
So moved.
So moved by Mr.
Second.
Gallagher, seconded by Mr. Bruno. On roll call for introduction, Mr. Gallagher.
Aye.
Mr. Faramasca.
Aye.
Mr. Bruno.
Aye.
And Mr. Francioli.
Aye.
So introduced. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we have a third ordinance for introduction, and it's a mouthful on introduction, so bear with me. This is docketed as ordinance number 26-2017. It's an ordinance of the Township Committee amending and supplementing the land use and development legislation by adding a new B-10 zone district and regulations, adding a new B10 zone overlay in the I industrial district, eliminating the B-1, B-P, and IB zone districts, changing the zone classification of various properties in the B, B1, BP, DS, I, IB, IP, R25, and RM2 zones to the new B-10 zone district, revising the zone boundaries of the DS, IP, OBDS, RM2 zone districts, the regulations for gasoline service stations, amending the regulations for the B, I, IB2, IP, RM2, and TC zone districts, and amending regulations pertaining to hotels and motels, and amending the sign regulations, adding various use definitions, and amending various other provisions of Chapter 166 in order to accommodate the foregoing revisions, which I'm sure Committeeman Fermaska, as our Director of Planning, will be discussing in a minute. And this ordinance will be further considered for public hearing and final passage at the Township Committee meeting on the 28th of December at 8:30 p.m. And at that time, any person wishing to be heard concerning the ordinance will be given the opportunity to comment. And it is further directed that the Business Administrator Township Clerk publish the ordinance as a summary. This is a 34-page ordinance, but in accordance with the municipal land use law, we can provide a synopsis in concise form as to what the regulations are. So the summation will appear in the Daily Record somewhere during the second week of December, after that summation is prepared by Mr. Branchow. So at this time, may we have a motion to introduce ordinance 26-2017?
So moved.
I'm proud to introduce.
We have a motion by Mr. Fermaska, seconded by Mr. Bruno. On roll call for introduction, Mr. Gallagher.
Aye.
Mr. Fermaska.
Aye.
Mr. Bruno.
Aye.
And Mr. Francioli.
Aye.
So introduced.
Mr. Giorgio gave us a lot of the technical terms related to this ordinance. I'm just going to give you a simple English translation of it. This is a major undertaking of the Planning Board. It was over 2 years' worth of work. The Planning Board's made up of people just like you sitting out there. They're all residents. They care greatly about the township. They studied every lot from Ridgedale Avenue in the East Hanover side of town to Ridgedale Avenue on the Cedar Knolls side of town along Route 10, both sides of the corridor. They learned a lot about the challenges. They learned a lot about environmental issues. They learned about the Whippany River. They learned about narrow, shallow lots. And as a result of their analysis and their assessment, they put forward changes to the zoning that promotes and encourages redevelopment. We are trying to redevelop Route 10 in a manner that would be very conducive to what we want in terms of a vision on Route 10. We're looking to attract commercial properties. We're looking to attract offices. We are not looking to advance housing on Route 10. Let me repeat that again. We are not looking to advance housing on Route 10. We are focused on zoning, making the zoning a little bit more conducive to redevelopment. We're looking forward to providing uses that will fit within our township. And we are providing what we call the amenities to redevelopment. And what is an amenity to redevelopment? Signage. We're looking to advance signage that will facilitate attracting investors who want to locate on Route 10 so they can use their property, advance their property, and facilitate shoppers coming into those stores which are in the future. This, I wish I could snap my finger and say, hey, it's going to be done within a year. It's not going to be done within a year. We've been working and planning from 2 to 3 years on this, and the good news is we now have the tools in place to facilitate it. But it's going to be block and lot, one at a time, getting it done. But the tools are in place now to advance that. So from a planning standpoint, I feel good about that, and I thank the Township Committee for all of their support and the Planning Board members for the amount of time that they put into making this happen.
Thank you, John. Very good. To punctuate one thing with John, and we're trying to simplify this, and it's been several years in the working. This puts the tools in place for private sector to buy lands along the Route 10 corridor, and it relaxes some zoning so that they can develop these retail uses along that highway. It's strictly directed to the highway zone from the Marriott Hotel up there toward the Parsippany line, going straight back down toward East Hanover on both sides of the street. So this is the ordinance that relaxes some of the zoning, but then makes the zoning more attractive for private landowners to come in and buy these parcels of land, homes that we're anxious to get rid of on Route 10 that are in demise, businesses that some have been abandoned, etc., and provide better uses on 10. So hopefully that'll be the eventuality. Thanks, John. Fine. Joe, on that? It's been offered and...
Okay, you already
okay.
introduced that. We're moving to the resolutions.
Resolutions, go ahead.
Okay, on page 2, we have resolutions as a consent agenda, items 9A through E. Any questions from members of the Township Committee?
Move that they be approved.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Faramasca, seconded by Mr. Bruno. On roll call, Mr. Gallagher.
Aye.
Mr. Faramasca.
Aye.
Mr. Bruno.
Aye.
And Mr. Francioli.
Aye.
So approved. We have the payment of bills, $7,200,438.30.
So moved.
We have a motion.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
So approved. And also the raffle applications as a consent agenda. Any questions about any of the raffle applications?
Motion to
We
approve.
have a motion by Mr.
Second.
Bruno, second by Mr. Gallagher. All in favor?
Aye.
So approved. Mr. Chairman, members of the Township Committee, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Joseph. All right, gentlemen, once again, I'd like to open the floor to the public, and we can open discussion on any area the public so desires. So motion to
moved.
open? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, the floor is open, but once again, we just remind you, if you use the podium, give us your name and address for the record. And on that note, the floor is open.
Bermanstedt, 40 Warren Street, Whippany. I'm only going to, this is on the Bear Stearns project. I'm going to keep mine hopefully simple and to one point. There's a lot of people here tonight. There are people who are missing because of this school closing. Today particularly, and we can discuss the details if we have to, but today particularly pointed out to me what I think, in my opinion, has been a lack of clear communications between various town committees and the general public. I strongly urge the two committees, the Township Committee and the Planning Board, to be more, to increase the communications, but to be clearer on them. If we need to go into any details, I'll listen to questions and try to explain it. But I think I'm clear on that subject.
Okay. Is there areas, Bert, that you feel that either the board or the committee was deficient in notification?
No, not on notification. Specifically, though, Ron, since you've asked, the residence is adjoining or close to the Bear Stearns project on the eastern side of and the northeastern side of the property. Left, from what I'm hearing, left the board meeting last week.
Planning board meeting, yeah.
Planning
board meeting.
Board. Yeah, when I said board versus committee, yes, excuse me, planning board meeting. Left that meeting with the understanding that nothing would be done on the site.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I've come to learn that that's not true. Some things have been done, but it's been explained to me that some things can be done. I think we could have avoided a lot of issues that have arisen, some today, had we been more clear on that issue. So that's one communications issue. But I think we're going to find others as we go along in the next couple of weeks. And I think I urge the Township Committee, its representatives on the Planning Board, and everyone else involved to be clear on what is going to do, what they intend to say. Again, I personally came away from that board meeting with the same impression that a number of my neighbors have, that nothing would happen. As I said, I learned differently today. I understand what was said, and I understand why there is some activity on the site. But that was not clear, again, when we left the meeting, and I don't think it was clear. I don't mean to speak for every other resident, but to my knowledge, I don't think it was clear to any other resident either.
The activities, Bert, that are going, that you and I are familiar with, that are going on there now, are outside the planning board's purview. So the planning boards, and I can't be quoted as to exactly what the chairman of the planning board said regarding the site, but I'm sure that his explanation was that their case isn't going forward, and that he did make notification that of the new date for the case to continue, with no further notification necessary. I mean, there's been some requests upon the township to move that date up. We would not do that. The notification to the people has been made, and that's it. Regarding the site, yes, our engineer was out there today. We had him inspecting the site again. There were certain things going on the site that the planning board has no purview over. You and I would know that. Such as they're putting up a construction fence right now. This is a temporary type of fence. There is no planning approval. Looking down at council, that would not permit them to put up a fence, a temporary fence, on their property.
Correct.
I think I have heard, Jerry, I don't know if you've heard, that they're doing some demolition work inside the property.
I think they pulled some building permits because I think they're doing some work interior of the building.
Right.
And that was part of the construction fence.
That's Bert, that's the operational word. They pulled building permits to do demo work inside their buildings. We're somewhat handicapped. We're somewhat hamstrung. I know the concerns of our community. I know the concerns of the neighborhood, and I appreciate them. But it's like you or I demoing our basement to redo it. If you come in for a permit and you meet the requirement, you're going to get a permit to demo your basement. To tell, not Bear Stearns, but to tell now Barclays Bank that they can't have a permit to demo inside their buildings, I don't know that we have the ability to keep them from such a permit, what I'm saying. All right. So I'm saying that there's some hamstrung here. And the public perception, when they look at that, is that they're going ahead with this project. If they're doing anything within the realm of getting building permits, they're taking the risk upon themselves at this point. But no other aspect of this project, as you and I know, the garage aspect, the movement of the taking up of surface parking areas, and the other improvements or changes that they want to make, can be or are approved at this point.
Let me get down in the weeds with one other communications. And Jerry knows, I came down to Town Hall this morning to talk to Jerry, because as I observed out there today, the contractor apparently didn't understand or wasn't doing their job or wasn't supervised properly. The workers were cutting down branches on the berm to put up the fence. God knows we need every branch we can. We don't need them clipped. Now, I can understand some of those branches that are clipped right along the fence line, but in some cases they were clipped back almost to the trunk, 5 feet away from the fence. In other words, it's an issue of communications. Somebody doesn't understand.
Well, I did send an inspector out once we...
No, I think, Jerry, I appreciate that, and I think it was stopped.
It was.
I'm talking about before that. There was not proper supervision, not proper communications of what they can touch and what they can't touch.
Any disturbance that occurred at that location to that buffer that we can define, we can have it replaced.
Thank you, John. That was going to be a subject that was going to be another subject for, and the subject is titled remediation, as far as I'm concerned. And we can talk about that. We don't have to talk about that here. We can talk about how and what we're going to remediate.
If they disturbed that, they did not have planning board approval for that, subsequently, they're going to have to do replacement.
Actually, they hacked enough of some of those beautiful holly trees. There's enough room to plant more hollies. Again, we'll take
Sounds
that
like a
up
good
another
idea to
session.
me.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen.
They have an aggressive landscape plan that we heard at the first meeting. And so to the extent that they can, I think that berm has got to be reforested, et cetera, in addition. I mean, they were talking thousands of plants in the overall. And look, a plant could be a shrub up to a tree. I understand that. But the reforestation of that area is part of what's got to go on. There's no question about that. And understand, too, and it came out of that meeting, that the township reserves the right to go on the site after it's complete, should it get complete, and review whatever needs we have and add additional landscaping as need be, should that be the case. But whatever they're disturbing, John's absolutely correct. They'll have to be replaced. Yeah.
Ron, I just focus on your word aggressive. They were much too aggressive in hacking trees today.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for bringing it to our awareness.
Okay. Floor remains open.
Good evening, Council. I would also
Pick
like
that microphone up and talk right into it. There you go.
Okay. Good evening, Council.
Your name and address for the record, please.
Yes, 39. My name is Gail Brzezinski, Brezinski, and I live at 39 Warren Street. I would like to say thank you very much for that, looking into the remediation of the damaged trees and shrubs. Just want to make a statement. If you have any questions for me at the end, that's fine. But I just want you to understand our feelings and concerns. You are our elected representatives, and we're asking that, as always, you will support and protect our neighborhood legally, morally, ethically during this Barclays renovation process. I ask that you would strongly consider suggestions made by some of the residents to possibly, maybe, this might be for the planning board, but it's on our minds, to possibly make a change with where the parking garages might be located. Keep us better notified, as Bert had mentioned, on different changes, such as, if possible, ordinance changes. I understand that one got changed a couple days after the Barclays put their proposal in. You know, I know that's legal and legit. It's just kind of, you know, we would like to know what's going on. Now, I understand from hearing you this evening explain that they are, Barclays are allowed to do interior renovations and such. What happened about 3 days after the planning board meeting was, for a period of about 3 hours, late in the evening, I'd say maybe 11, but 3 hours into the night, very loud, low booms, like a sub-low booms. They were repetitious and, like I said, regular. And I could not sleep. And not the houses that butt up to it, but I'm across the street, and I was hearing it loud and clear. So maybe somebody could look into that. It's our goal as the residents of Whippany, through compromise, and to achieve a good quality of life for our neighborhood. With this encompassing maybe watching, and we're concerned about an increase of noise, of fumes, car fumes, exhausts, light pollution from construction lighting and parking garage lighting and so forth, visual obstructions by the parking garage, mature tree removal. Nobody likes to see that. Maybe builders, but, and also an increase of traffic. Yes, I know that's for the planning board, but we're seeing traffic presently that's pretty bad for about 4 hours trying to get out to Route 10 on 3 different roads. So it's a concern that that's going to increase, and we also have those new townhouses that's going to bring more traffic to the area. I don't think it's possible for even an expert to surmise the degree of traffic that's going to take place. Nobody knows. Maybe it's not so bad, maybe it's a disaster. We need to be prepared for that. Nobody wants change in their home area. So I'm just asking you all, please consider us. We're putting our trust in you because you're who we have, and to help us make this a fair agreement. Yes, I'm sure it's going to be legal to the T, but a fair agreement. And that's all I have to say, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gil. Let me give you some updates that I've shared with Bert over some time. And Bert, allow me to comment, if I can, on some of the things we've been discussing. Certain members of the planning board, myself included, deputy mayor included, are most concerned about any light that affects the residential neighborhood, including present daylight, which is the office buildings now.
Right.
We know they leave their lights on day and night. Might be an energy thing, etc. And we're most concerned, regardless of where the parking garages go, if they go where they are or if they're going to be moved further down, etc., that any side of a parking garage that faces a residential neighborhood has to be completely shielded.
Okay.
That's going to be our how should I say? I can't say requirement because this isn't approved yet.
Right.
But I can say it's going to be our demand of the applicant, is that they come up with a shielding. Now, they intend at the next planning board case to bring forward their architectural engineer to talk to that.
Okay.
There are ways of shielding, so I don't think we'll accept anything but the fact that 100% of the light is shielded. They'll have to address that. So you can be assured that we're going to take a very firm, hard stance on the lighting aspect of it.
I do understand that Bayer Healthcare has, for their interior lighting,
Yeah.
it goes off, but as soon as there's movement in there, it'll light up for that particular floor.
Yeah.
And that really makes a big difference, and so they can have minimal lighting in there, and then if there's people walking by, it'll turn on. That might be something.
There are conditions. What would you be thinking of that in a garage area or the office building itself?
Anywhere where it's appropriate.
The Bayer office building has some great technology, including that, which brings the lights down.
Sure.
They also have self-dimming window fenetra systems,
yes,
which is interesting. I think we can impose upon Barclay to do all they possibly can. Barclay, as you and I know, I think we all appreciate one thing. It's a premier company worldwide. To say that they're Fortune 500 is an understatement. I think they're Fortune 50. Fortune 50. We were going to impose upon them to do the right thing. And I don't even know if that's a good word, because I think Barclay's going to want to do the right thing to the full extent that they can. I know that this project is going to fall under the realm of what's known as a green project. John could probably speak to that better than I can. But I can tell you that they're going to do everything they can from an environmental standpoint to make it better than it is now. What does that mean to you, to the neighbors? We've got to hear that at the next meeting, and we'll be anxious to hear that. There's been other concerns that we've had with exhaust fumes and noxious fumes, etc. I've had our planner make some comment on that. He's given us some reports on that. Their planner will probably do the same. Right now, with surface parking that you've got on there, we've got thousands of parking spaces spread out along the whole area there, and we also have the lighting off of those parking spaces. We call the isolux that spreads from the parking lots all over, lights that place up like New Year's, when it's on. So if we can deal with the removal of that lighting and the surface parking, and it's consolidated into some of these garages in some fashion, and finally shielded from the neighbors, boy, is that a home run. But that's what we've got to go after. That's what we've got to go after. So I think this next planning board meeting is critical for all of us and the neighbors to come out and hear what's going to be said about that. But I think we're focused down to what our neighbors' concerns are.
And the noise.
I know I know primarily it's the garage and its location.
Yes.
I know it's the lighting. I know it's the fumes.
Noise.
I know it's the noise. So we're gonna
we need to get
address
some good
that.
sleep at night so we can be good, productive workers.
Absolutely.
But I really appreciate your explanation and your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good. Anyone, the floor remains open if anyone else would like to be heard at this time.
Ralph Monaco, 54 Warren Street, Whippany. Picking up again on the communications issue. I was one of the lucky ones to get a letter, but that certified letter, there was a meeting. But however, when we were at the last meeting and the the regulation discussion, the 46 feet and the height of the building was discussed, and I asked the planning board, could you tell me why it was, was approved? And they said, well, that's not us. Take it up with the township committee.
Called passing the buck, but I'll give you an answer.
Well, I know they're passing the buck because looking at the minutes afterwards, the planning board recommended it. I saw they had a meeting on the 12th to discuss this. In fact, they, in the minutes, said we approved this, for themselves and passed a letter on.
It's a procedure.
Right. To pass it on to this committee to approve it, which you did. But now communication. We get a letter to come to the meeting in October. Meanwhile, the key fact of 46 feet is already approved and saying, well, we're well within our regulations here to have 46 feet. Well, maybe we should have had a letter to attend the meeting that when we were discussing the 46 feet, so you could hear from the public and not just approve something that people have no say-so or didn't have a chance to. All we're saying is you're well within the regulation. Well, we didn't get a chance. That's a big communication gap, in my opinion.
I think John can explain the progression of that. But your point is notification to the neighbors of that happening. Now, in the process of that, when we made that change in that modification of that ordinance, it was a open public meeting would be held at the planning board on the change and then referred to us in the same
under the municipal land use law, which governs
our regulations,
zoning and land use. The township is required to do a couple of things. Township committee introduces the ordinance. It is then sent to the planning board with a request for what they say in the law, referral and recommendation. Simultaneous with that request, the ordinance is required to be published once in the official newspaper of the Township of Hanover, which is the Daily Record. And that was done. The ordinance was introduced, I believe, on the 14th of September, and it was published in the Daily Record on the 20th of September. In the meantime, the ordinance was sent to the planning board for referral and recommendation. With regard to an ordinance of that type, there's no regulation in the municipal land use law that requires that the owners of property within 200 feet be notified. The only time that happens, and I'll defer to Mr. Branchow, is when there is a boundary line change or a change in classification in zone. So in this case, we're talking about different conditions. So the municipal land use law does not require any kind of notification for that.
Okay. Well, again, back to my question that I asked the planning board, they told me to ask you, why was 46 foot approved?
Okay.
I mean, this was strictly for
No,
Barclays' purpose to change
change
the regulation that we've had forever.
Yeah.
Now all of a sudden, they want to come in and put a 46 foot structure
That's a more
up,
than
and we
fair
approve it.
question.
Yeah.
But I'm going to John.
Yeah, I think, Mr. Monaco, you're raising a very good question. And in fairness to that question, which came up at that planning board night, we asked our planner, who's here tonight, Blaise Branchow, to give us the history. Go back, Blaise, and take us through the whole continuum of parking garages in Hanover Township. So I would like to give him an opportunity to share the research which he did for us, because it goes back to 1956. This doesn't go back to September of 2017, and I want him to go through it so that we all understand what actually is the transition of parking garages in Hanover Township, so that we're all on the same level playing field, because we need to over-communicate. We heard it loud and clear from Bert that we need to over-communicate on this issue. I think this would be helpful if we all were aware of what he's going to share with us. So Blaise, I'm going to ask you to read to us your history of the use of parking garages for non-residential uses in Hanover Township.
Happy to do so, Mr. Fairmosca. At the request of Mr. Fairmosca, I researched our code and the historical treatment of parking garages in town. And what I found was that for many years, starting at least with the 1956 zoning ordinance, the township has permitted private garages, which is just basically defined as storage or parking of motor vehicles by employees and visitors, essentially a parking deck. And the ordinance at that time permitted those private garages, this is through the 50s, the 60s, and the 70s, to have the same height as the principal building. It wasn't until the 1980s that the term parking structure or parking deck was starting to be used. And in 1985, as part of the comprehensive code amendment for the land use ordinance, the code mentioned that parking structures would be limited only to a planned development in the I and the IP zones. It also, at that time, permitted parking decks to be the same height as principal buildings. In 1988, the ordinance was amended to allow planned development in the OBRL zone. In that ordinance, parking decks were limited to a height of 28 feet in the OBRL zone. Parking lots could be 50 feet from the property line of a residence, but the parking deck would have to be 100 feet from a residence. In 2002, the code was amended again to convert a portion of the OBRL zone to the OBRL 3 zone, which is the former Bell Labs site, former Lucent Technologies site, now the current Bayer and MetLife property. That was converted to an OBRL 3 zone, and in that zone, as part of that change in zoning, the height of parking decks in that zone was permitted to be increased to 46 feet. It was this year that the township was approached by the owner-developer of the former Bear Stearns property on South Jefferson, pointed out to the township, you permit 46 feet there, why don't you permit 46 feet here? Pointed out a number of benefits to the town and to the public by doing so, including the reduction of a lot of surface parking that's already there, increased green space by removal of that parking, reduced lighting for that surface parking, reduced stormwater runoff for that parking, and a number of other benefits of doing that. And it was with that analysis and that discussion that the township ultimately amended it to allow the same height in this zone that it allows in the OBRL 3 zone, because it saw the benefits of doing so.
How about the negatives of doing so?
Well, there's always trade-offs and compromises, but the town...
I didn't hear any of those.
Well, the negatives, the main negatives, and the town identified those as well when it was discussing this, was the light effect, the noise effect, and the other effects. It felt and still feels that those can be sufficiently mitigated by, for example, the placement of louvers in the deck openings, the design of lighting to be more shielded than it would otherwise be, or lower in height than it would otherwise be, to reduce lighting levels to minimal needed for security reasons during the overnight hours, so that you don't have even that level of lighting that's there, and by the setbacks of the decks and the plantings. The feeling was that the benefits, once you add the benefits and you mitigate the detriments, that the committee felt that it would be in the public interest to do it that way. Could the developer have built twice as many decks at 28 feet? It probably could have, but the Township Committee considered that and didn't feel that that would have been an improvement to have instead of one deck 46 to have two decks at 28, you'd still in that case have light, you'd still in that case have noise, but now you'd have more coverage, you'd have less green. So, you know, the Township Committee was trying to balance the good and the bad, and it felt that the good outweighed the bad in that case, and that it could mitigate the bad sufficiently to make it worthwhile doing.
It would have been nice, though, to have the communication so that you could hear from the public to help balance maybe the scorecard a little bit from the people who actually live in there. I don't know how many people on the committee here and the planning board actually went out to the property site, stood by the neighbors where we're all adjacent to this property, and to visualize a building of that size, a parking garage. I mean, when you're looking through the woods, and yeah, you have a parking lot. You don't see the parking lot because there's a berm and whatever. All you see is the building, so there's distance. But that distance now is going to be closed down right to the edge of the berm, and it'll be a huge building. I mean, you got to, you know, take a look at that. And I don't know, you were saying it was in the interest of the public. The public here, nobody feels they have an interest in that.
Well, you know, and I don't want to have a debate on this, but
okay.
Even without that recent amendment, someone could have put a office building in the same location as a deck, and that would have been allowed to have been 55 feet high. And that was under the current zoning, which has been that way for 30 years. So that was one of the considerations that the governing body took into account, was that if it's the visual effect of it, the zoning would allow a 55-foot tall building even without that amendment. So, and the deck provides some blocking of the view of the existing building. So those were all considerations. How you come out on the balancing, obviously different people can disagree, and I'm only trying to explain what the thinking was.
A 55-foot building, though, not again to debate, though, you probably wouldn't have enough parking spots for more 55-foot buildings. I mean, right now, I'm sure they're allocated in any building. You got to have so many parking spots for a 150,000 square foot building. I don't think the property could handle another building or two of that size and have enough parking for that without breaching into the buffer zones for sure. But anyway, I think that's my point. And
well, you know, on that note, I mean, the present site plan before the planning board doesn't exceed the yard areas of any.
No,
any violations of yard.
The decks are like 175 feet from the property line.
75.
175.
175.
Yeah.
Which they're within.
They're allowed to be 100 feet, and where they're proposed is well in excess of 100 feet.
Yeah.
And that wasn't an amendment. That's been on the books for 30 years.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Again, I remind you, the planning board meeting coming up November 21st. November 21st.
Yeah.
7:30 it starts.
Yeah, we'll be there.
I broke my promise. I said I wasn't going to say anything, but I think we need to add to the comments that were made, or to Branch's reading of it. There is more than lighting involved and other site things. There are two other issues that seem to keep getting missed in this whole process, and that is the concentration, the intense concentration of fumes in a small area. And then there is the perceived, at least among a number of people, not just the people in the audience, I think people you talk to in the street, the perceived issue of safety with parking garages. We've been talking about the residences. We forget that the residences that will adjoin or be close to these two parking garages are split in the middle by an elementary school. Children who walk those streets and those paths, children who will be breathing those fumes morning and in the summertime, incidentally. It's not just school year, because Salem Drive has activities year-round during the summer. We need to add those elements to it. In my personal opinion, the poisonous fumes coming out of there are perhaps more important than anything else. I can close my eyes, but I can't close my lungs without risking death.
Joe DeKaiser, 36 Warren Street. The one thing I didn't hear tonight was the problem of water, and I know the EPA has approved the move. Who requested the EPA approval?
The EPA approval, Jim?
There is none. The current development plan does not require any DEP approval because they're not impacting any of the DEP.
You're talking about the approval from the previous buildings then? There's wetlands out there.
Yes, and there's a current letter of interpretation which defines the wetlands and the associated buffers, and they are not encroaching into any of those areas with the current development.
The new buildings will not be encroaching any of the wetlands?
No, sir.
Thank you.
Can't.
Right. Not without a permit.
Not without a permit.
Not without a permit, but they're not.
No, can't do it.
No. The floor remains open, folks. Hearing none? Seeing
Motion
none.
to close.
Motion to close. All in
Second.
favor?
Aye.
Okay. Okay. At this point, gentlemen, floor is open to you. Mr. Gallagher.
Two quick ones. This coming Tuesday, November 14th, with the Hanover Township PBA 128, the Hanover Township Substance Awareness Council, the Morris Area Coalition for Education and Positive Choices, and the Morris County Sheriff's Department, and the Whippany and Cedar Knolls Moms Group, we have a program called How to Better Protect Your Child from Sexual Assault, Child Abduction, and any additional types of abuse. I've announced it before as a SAD program. Usually I talk about things that are kind of fun and exciting and positive, but this is positive to a lot of us parents and a lot of us that are now grandparents, in that we want to make sure we're doing the best we can to protect our kids. My daughter's 13, she thinks she's 20, and it's a struggle every day, and my friends and I all lean on each other on what we think is an appropriate amount of slack and what isn't. Officer Littman here has been a big champion of this program, and this gentleman that's coming in to speak. So it's a 3-hour program. If anybody wants to come in and check it out for a little while, I know 3 hours is a long time. We'd love to see you. We'd love to help you, ask you to help us spread the word. It's going to be right here in the community center. And you know what's nice too, and I want to thank Bob Bruno, is I had a nice talk with Denise Brennan, and they do a lot of great things parallel to what we do. And we're going to start working together a little better, a little more hand in glove. And the recreation jumped in, and they're pushing this really hard with us too, because they're responsible for a lot of our kids, a lot of great activities. And we have a revolving door of our youngsters in that rec building, and it's appropriate that it's going to be held in the rec center. So Bob, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And we'll be working together and announcing things coming up shortly. But again, thank you, Dave, for all your hard work. The other thing I want to say is, again, Friday, January 5th to Friday, March 9th, 10 consecutive Friday nights, Men in Arena. We have an incredible special for all our kids. It's just about half price. You skate all night long, and we're going to have special events on every Friday night. And the last thing I'll say is you are seeing the DPW out there 7 days a week, almost 24 hours a day. Our fields are second to no one. The leaf pickup, I don't know how they do it. I hear those things I hear them when I'm sleeping in the morning, and I hear them when I'm going to bed at night. I mean, these guys are machines. They're great. We appreciate them, and I just want to thank them from this side of the desk with my colleagues here, because we do get a lot of compliments, and unfortunately sometimes we get some complaints, but I want to say they're doing a phenomenal job in just about every area. And that's it, Ron.
Good. Wait till they see what I put in front of the house. Oh my God. The leaves. God, they're all starting to go. I guess another week or so, guys, they're all going to be down.
All at once.
Yeah. John.
Okay, roads. We're still working on the roads. The good news is Whippany Road paving is done. And a special shout out to Hanover's Police Department. They did a fine job in terms of making traveling tolerable during that very difficult construction period. When you're talking about paving Whippany Road, this is no side street that they did. This is a major county roadway that they were able to provide safe travel. Hanover Avenue and Ridgedale Avenue. I would stay away from that corner tomorrow because, weather permitting, they will be paving that. And that normally on a good day has a lot of congestion. North Jefferson Road. Concrete work has begun. The plan is to complete paving by year end, weather permitting. Hanover Sewage Authority recently won a recognition for a national award called Utility of the Future today. Utility of the Future today. For innovation and forward-thinking practices that are providing sustainability, efficiency, and value-added services to the community of Hanover Township. So shout out to them. Pinch hitting for Committeeman, Director of Public Safety, George Coppola. He wants me to give some information out on 3 issues. Number 1, Knights of Columbus. There is a family Christmas party that will be held December 2nd at 6:30 at Our Lady of Mercy Parish Hall. It's a great event for those of us who have little children or grandchildren. So please just get the bulletin from Our Lady of Mercy or Notre Dame Church and make your reservation through that bulletin. Cedar Notes Fire Company will have a special family night at their firehouse on November 25th. Santa will be coming along with lighting of the biggest Christmas tree on Ridgeville Avenue that we have in Hanover Township. This Saturday is Veterans Day, November 11th. Mr. Coppola urges you to please thank our vets. Please thank our vets. And last Sunday, we recognized a vet posthumously. Corporal Slattery, one of Hanover's own, paid the ultimate price 50 years ago. And commemorating his service and his life, the Marine Corps League facilitated the installation and the funding of a beautiful monument that's outside of our municipal campus, right outside of the library, as you're looking at it on the left side. So I'd encourage you to take a look at that monument. It's a beautiful dedication to his life. Mayor, that concludes my report.
Thank you, John. Ace, what'd you forget?
You know what, Mayor, I forgot one point, and it's a very interesting one. With our School and Park Traffic Safety Advisory Committee, and I'd like to recognize Committeeman-elect Brian Cahill back there, who's the vice chair, and he's also currently a Board of Ed member. We announced, and it's going to be in the Daily Record because we think it's a good example of something that's going on here in Hanover Township, is some of our school buses are now equipped with technology where the police department can ticket from the camera. So when you see the arm go out on a school bus, and we always see somebody fly right by the bus, and you always look around and say, oh, and you want there to be a cop there right at that moment. And sometimes there is and sometimes there's not because they can't be everywhere. But now with the technology that we have in some of our buses, and we're going to get more, that technology will take a picture of that car, the make, model, and tag. It'll go to our police department, and you could ticket from that technology. It's 5 points on your license, and it's a lot of money. And the fact that it's going to get out there on this level is going to make people change their behavior almost right away. Because as a committee, 4 of our 6 portable signs that say your speed when you ride by them, 4 of our 6 have that camera in them now. But do you believe people say to me, Gallagher, the one on Park Avenue, does that one have a camera in it? Like, why would somebody even ask me that? But the bottom line is the fact that they wonder, and we talked about this before tonight, when you see that sign, you naturally check your speed and slow down a little bit. So we're doing a lot of work, and again, a lot of work with the schools and with our body and with our school and park.
That's awesome.
So that's going to make everything safer almost right away. And I'm going to talk to Jim Lang because I'd like Jim to put something too, because a lot of us read his paper
Are
too.
they in the buses now, or we put in?
Yeah, I believe we have. I don't want to say the number, but yes, it's in our buses now.
They're in the buses.
They're in the buses now.
That's good. That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Very good.
Thank you, Ron.
Yeah. I don't know that there's a more worse moving violation than passing a school bus that's letting children off. That's for sure. Very good. Robert.
Few items. The ski program for our middle schoolers is the registrations are still taking place. The first trip is right after New Year's on January 5th. So if you want to send your middle schoolers skiing, get registered quickly. Wrestling has begun. Basketball has begun, but there's still room if you want to register for recreation basketball or wrestling. We have a new activity at the rec center on Tuesdays for those with younger children from 1 till 3, just an open play time. So bring the kids, the grandchildren, Tuesdays as the weather gets a little chillier, looking for some opportunities to have the kids run around and meet some new friends. 1 till 3, no real structure. So if you're looking to do something very informal. And hard to believe, as Committeeman Faramasca mentioned, the KFC is having their Christmas festivities December 2nd. We will be doing the same here at the Rec Center on December 2nd from 2 to 4. Here comes Santa, face painting, DJ, arts and crafts. 3 weeks from Saturday. Can you believe we're having Christmas activities 3 weeks from Saturday? Beyond that, the second annual chili cook-off, February 2nd, which is the Friday of Super Bowl weekend. Last year's winner, of course, is bragging and looking to repeat. So mark that on your calendar. Be a chili Friday, some good hot chili. I'm sure we'll hit the spot. And lastly, our 5th and 6th grade football players have been nationally recognized, one of the top teams in the country at that age group. They're going to have an opportunity to play into a national tournament, much like the baseball players do when they go out to Williamsport. It's all televised on ESPN. So football looking to get some positive vibes from the kids. And our 5th and 6th graders will be playing in the regional tournament first, trying to get to Canton, Ohio, on December 1st up at Pope John High School. We'll put some information on the webpage. But it's really an honor for that group of kids. The coaches, I think we're going to bring them in here and recognize them and wish them good luck. But they've won 39 games in a row. So the future, not the immediate future, but the future of Whippany Park, football looks great. And in the meantime, we're going to really wish those 5th and 6th graders best of luck as they try to get to a national tournament. Really incredible.
Giants could use some of them in a draft.
Ah, very good point. Very good point.
Giants could use them in a draft. Boy, yeah, I watch the games now to see how many they can continually lose. I'm sorry, folks. Sorry.
It's been bad.
But in any event, hey, that's great. And if any of you did not get over to Malapartis Park last Saturday for the masquerade party for the kids, that was outrageous. That was great. It's such a good thing, and I'm so happy that Hanover takes such an active role in that, where the kids can come out for Halloween candy. They go to little homes that are dotted around the lake area, etc. We get so much cooperation with that from Denise, our Parks and Recreation Department, and yeah, we bring our kids, our grandkids, and there we are. Mike Mahalko and I showed up. But that was terrific, and it seems to get better and bigger every year. So kudos to Denise, the park staff, PW, everyone that participated in that day. That was great.
Excellent. Good point.
If there's no further news or information for the Township Committee, I'm going to accept the motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Folks, thank you very much. One final reminder, Tuesday, November 21st at 7:30. Be here. Good. Very good. Thank you. Very good. You all right?
Don't forget.
Down?
Howard, get on.
Are we done? No, we have personnel.
Make sure you bring it home.
Oh, you know what I had? Whenever you need to, I called Jim, and I said,